Last year, the most exciting Russian prospect in the draft was one Matvey Michkov. This year, it is Ivan Demidov. Demidov, just like Michkov, he's a forward. He's a winger. There are some thoughts that he might be able to play center at the NHL level, but most likely he's going to be a winger. He's also a little small. 5'11", 168 is what Elite Prospects has his height and weight at. So he's not a big guy, but the skill is undeniable. Demidov started his draft year actually playing in the KHL. He made his KHL team out of camp, SKA St. Petersburg, but he only lasted about 4 games, got minimal ice time, and eventually got sent down to the Russian Junior League, the MHL, working with the St. Petersburg affiliate team down in the MHL, and that is where Demidov really took charge. Demidov tore it up in the MHL. 60 points in just 30 games in the regular season. That ranked him second among MHL forwards. But get this, the top guy had only 4 more points than Demidov in 24 more games. So Demidov was the premier scoring forward in the MHL, and he kept it up in the playoffs. If you look at his final full season playoffs and regular season numbers, pretty ridiculous. 47 games played, 34 goals, 54 assists, 88 points in 47 games. Just a dominant offensive year for Demidov. It's no surprise that he is such an exciting prospect for the 2024 NHL Draft. The general consensus about Demidov is that he has the upside to be an impact top-line forward at the NHL level, legitimately with star-level potential. You watch Demidov play, and there are just so many good things about his game. He has so many strengths as a player. The top one, in my mind, is playmaking and passing ability. He is a born playmaker. That's not to say he can't score goals. It just means that he wants to create goals for his line mates. He is such a smart player with the puck. He has incredible handles of the puck. He's just the kind of guy that creates goals essentially out of nothing. But the strengths of Demidov's game, they go far beyond playmaking and passing. He's a legitimately good skater. I wouldn't say he's a burner, but in terms of his edges, in terms of his change of direction, his elusiveness, I would say that's high end, and that's going to be a strength of his game, I think, going into the NHL as well. In addition, he's a guy who never stops moving. The motor is extremely high. He's a hard worker in the offensive zone. He's even a hard worker in the defensive zone. He shows the ability to chase down pucks, to create turnovers. He's the kind of guy that is very difficult to defend because he never stops moving. And part and parcel of that ability to just keep moving, that high motor, it makes him extremely difficult to defend off the puck in the offensive zone. He's constantly finding soft spots in the offensive zone to make himself an option for passes, to create spacing for his teammates, to just make things a little bit more dangerous in the offensive zone. I don't know if I've scouted a player in this draft class that is better off the puck on the attack, and that's going to make him a threat at the NHL level, and it speaks to the quality of his hockey IQ in particular. And finally, he may be more of a playmaker than a shooter, but don't take that to mean that he can't shoot the puck. When he deploys that shot, it is a legitimately good shot, and he has the ability to beat goalies clean. So if those are the positives, what are the negatives? What are the weaknesses of Demidov's game that has him that he's not competing with Macklin Celebrini to be the top pick in the draft? There are some. I think the big one is size. He's just not that big of a player. This is something we came across with Michkov last draft. It's not that Demidov is tiny. He's 5'10", 5'11"-ish. He's about 170, at least that's what he is on Elite Prospects. So he's not extremely small, but he's not huge. He's not going to be a physically dominant forward. He isn't a physically dominant forward in Russia at the MHL level, and he's not going to be a physically dominant forward at the NHL level either. But players can get away with not being the biggest as a forward if you are an elite skater. And I wouldn't quite call Demidov an elite skater. As I said earlier, the elusiveness, the change of direction, the edges, they're there and they're really good. But if you're looking for a guy with an elite top-end gear, with breakaway speed, who could just go around opposing defensemen and just burn them, that's really not Demidov. He has the ability to separate, but he has to do it with his edges. He has to do it with his stop-start ability. He doesn't have that breakaway gear, and that always scares scouts. The way a lot of scouts look at it is, if a guy is small, he has to be really, really fast. Demidov is a good skater. In some ways, he's a great skater, but he doesn't have that breakaway gear that scouts look for from smallish players like Demidov is. Then there's the fact that the playmaking can go a little overboard. Demidov loves to pass. He loves to find guys open for high-quality scoring chances, but sometimes he can overpass. He can be in a really good shooting position and still pass his way out of it because he just has that playmaker's mentality. That is something in his game. It might always be part of his game, but it might always be something that frustrates people about his game because he passes up on legitimate goal-scoring opportunities to try to thread that perfect pass to a teammate that may or may not get through. And then finally, there is the Russian factor. Now, this may not be as big of a deal now. We have seen Ivan Demidov in Philadelphia come over after having to spend a year in Russian military service. It does appear that Michkov may be able to get out of his contract as early as 2 years before originally expected. So maybe the Russian factor isn't as big of a deal as it seemed to be last year when it was one of the factors that pushed Michkov down to number 7, but it's still there. There are still geopolitical concerns going on with the Russia invasion of Ukraine, and there is always the concern that someone like Demidov may take longer to come over to North America than a North American prospect. Now, right now, Demidov is signed for 1 more year. In theory, he would be able to come over as soon as the 2025 summer if he doesn't re-up his contract, but things can change very quickly in Russia, and some teams could, in theory, be scared away by that possibility. Now, for me personally, I am a believer in Ivan Demidov. He is my second favorite player in this draft class behind only Macklin Celebrini. I think he has top-line, potentially star-level potential as a playmaker. I think he could be a point-per-game plus player at the NHL level. And for me, I would take him number 2, but we'll see what NHL teams decide on draft day.
We all silly like the mayor.